Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that's shaking up not just the entertainment world but the entire globe. Recently, one of the biggest stars of American pickers, Mike Wolfe, was handed a shocking sentence: life in prison, but the charges against him are enough to make your spine tingle. These claims resemble the scheme of a dangerous horror film smuggling operation. Artifacts from various nations concealed within evidence pertaining to a deceased renowned historian, and even deceiving. All of this in the antique auction market. Tens of millions of dollars, in total. As millions of admirers watch, but is Mike Wolfe really the brains behind this? He is merely a victim of a risky system. If this story piques your interest, don't forget to subscribe and like the channel to reveal the mysteries that lie beyond. In the current video, from a number of prominent news sources concurrently stated that Mike Wolfe, the reality show's main spokesperson, the punishment imposed on American pickers is what the charges sound like: is life in jail. The storyline of a dangerous horror film. Hidden international artifact smuggling. In information pertaining to a renowned historian and controlling the value of antique auctions rises. Tens of millions of dollars were spent on millions of people watching. Mike Wolfe has consistently personified the image of a traveler who is interested in heritage throughout the U.S. to find new things with time's soul, yet the truth came out. Painted a different picture throughout a 46-day trial. Imagine a calculating, chilly man with covert connections to a covert antique Middle Eastern smuggling networks and Europe. The narrative started on June 17, 2023, when Bloomington, Indiana's police was contacted by a neighbor reporting an odd odor emanating from Professor Harold's basement, the home of Clemens, a retired historian who had been a University of Chicago professor and focused on items from the Civil War. When officials arrived, they discovered Clemens was dead, laying on his right back hand with a tiny object, a silver pocket watch with a subtle but words that are still readable. RK-187 means honor rather than. At first look, glory seemed to be the elderly man's natural death. Although I was living alone, the watch was something that wasn't supposed to be there. After only 1 week, the Savannah National, an internal memo released by the museum, was swiftly revealed that the watch had previously been a component of the battlefield heritage, a collection that has vanished in 2019 during an unidentified transfer of archives. The event was never disclosed to the public. A scandal was feared by the museum until the item suddenly emerged in the possession of a corpse. This information swiftly spread on social networking, but what really sparked the circumstance originated from an unnamed Reddit user post made by a user called GearGhost82. A discussion about antique collecting. I swear I saw this exact watch on this subreddit in an episode of American that wasn't shown. Pickers during Mike's farm visit in Kentucky had it in his hand, and even said that stories are told by the watch. In less than 48 hours, dozens of people arrived forward asserting that they had witnessed the identical item from the performance, or something like video that became well known on YouTube in 2021, but other users were eventually removed. I saw it displayed at Antique, he added. Nashville Archaeology last. In July 2023, the FBI discreetly started an inquiry in collaboration with the international smuggling of artifacts. Rust is the operations task force name. Rail's main goal was to ascertain if Mike Wolfe was associated with an unlawful on a federal level and potentially global network for smuggling antiques. One of their first leads was obtained from an History Channel's unreleased video disclosed by a former worker. In the 14-minute video, Mike Wolfe is seen haggling to purchase a pocket watch belonging to an unknown man. A warehouse close to Paducah, Kentucky. Owned by Elgin, a U.S. The voice of manufacturer Mike in the video. I am aware that this piece has passed through an officer's hands. It has historical significance, but I won't inquire as to whence you obtained it. What sparked even more skepticism was the not completely absent connection between Mike Wolfe and Harold Clemens in 2017. Clemens made a fleeting appearance at a television lecture on regional history artifacts During his introduction, he said something cryptic regarding certain relics that should never sell them. They are in anguish and have no money can purchase. A computer email from Clemens' internal network regained following his passing showed deeper doubts in a communication with his close friend wrote, I think I've discovered a network of unlawful deals involving a well-known television personality. I'm debating if I should alert the federal authorities. 3 days ago, this email was sent prior to his passing. Despite the fact that officials discovered no indications of assault, according to the autopsy report. Little bruising on Clemens's back. Head from an impact or fall, perhaps. Prior to his unconsciousness, nobody was charged with his murder, but from that point at which the inquiry was modified, Mike Wolfe's official direction was categorized as special federal monitoring. That tiny watch used to be a small detail turned become the spark that ignited the whole. To face justice, the ancient empire must. Following the appearance of the silver pocket watch beside the body of Professor Harold Clemens, the federal detectives started reviewing every episode that was broadcast of The American Pickers while also providing official requests for internal documents from the production and the History Channel. Business that the FBI promptly. Abnormality involving above 40 between 2020 and 2023. Things that the movie crew and Mike Wolfe had never been broadcast on television. Some were captured using a simple buy receipts, but no precise documentation of where. They then proceeded, encompassing the apocalyptic pocket watch. The code for the covert probe came to rust. Rail was used to describe the path of objects buried in the basement of a warehouse or possibly the subterranean vendors of antique stores. Initially, the team conducting the study could, rather than going straight to Mike Wolfe, they stealthily followed one of his Craig Salinas, a backstage assistant who served as the primary logistics driver, the production team's handler. Throughout a roughly 6-hour observation, Salinas' session in southern Missouri was seen operating a truck with the label Archaeology from Antiquity to an Abandoned Warehouse, a place that isn't mentioned in any official documents. The local police were requested to help by pretending to be a construction worker. There, the inspection crew observed a number of wooden containers that are sealed and contain goods from the 19th and 19th centuries, containing a minimum of 3 things determined by the FBI to have been taken from a Georgian local museum. A significant development happened when the The search was obtained by the investigation team. Warrants for 2 private storage facilities. Facilities listed under a business. Referred to as a front for Time Vault Logistics LLC. Business that Mike Wolfe owned stock in. Through 3 financial tiers. Middlemen at the initial warehouse in. Numerous unrecorded antiques in Ohio were found in Civil War handguns and destroyed manuscripts by hand to an almost a 1-meter-tall Egyptian figure that is meticulously kept in a shockproof. Assemble this statue in accordance with a stolen statue matched an internal complaint. From Egypt's Luxor Museum in 2011. Following the money's trace, the FBI found that Mike Wolfe was the owner of at least 5 small businesses were set up in tax refuges such as the Cayman and Bis Malta Islands from 2016 and 2023, with almost $4.7 million is being moved between these businesses through vintage transactions. But none of the transactions included qualified appraisers or trustworthy auction houses. Notably, a bank account in Switzerland under the name of Wolfe was given a $150,000 sent by a private individual associated with the subterranean antique Aleppo, Syria, market that had once charged with acting as a center for cultural treasures that were stolen during the war. Investigators were astounded at how Mike coordinated the entire process without official crew members were in charge of delivering the products after all of the filming was turned over to third parties whose contracts were signed through applications for virtual faxes and payments made in money or cryptocurrency. The FBI made the decision to network by going up to an antique shop that Wolfe had already been to in New Mexico. A casual gathering between Mike and the undercover agent met on December 3rd evening in an audio. Mike was heard on the recording indicating that not every item ought to be broadcast on television. Things are for those who actually recognize their worth rather than the audience. Immediately following this encounter, the FBI carried out urgent searches at 3 sites pertaining to ancient archaeology, including a covert storage facility in North Nashville, where a list was found of 17 handwritten, encrypted documents mentioning artifacts in addition to black dates of transactions and market price codes. You'll be shocked by what they discovered. And follow the channel by subscribing. Observing this exciting tale. The list was accompanied by a personal Mike's notebook with pencil in it. Printed message that says, "They'll never recognize that this is about heritage, not heritage, and wealth cannot be used as a justification to violate the law." With numerous pieces of evidence, such as shadowy stories and unrecorded artifacts, and documents demonstrating Mike Wolfe's hiding, was designated as the main suspect in what might turn out to be the largest scandal in reality TV in the U.S. history of a contentious trial and decision for. It happened on January 9, 2025. The formal federal trial of Mike Wolfe started with increased security in Chicago, as well as reporters in attendance of the crowds outside the courthouse, gathered with free microphone signs, continuing to think it was all a miscommunication, but what was disclosed? Most people were left in the courtroom. The 39-page indictment, which identified 6 principal accusations, such as the unlawful international antique transportation, tax on the trafficking of cultural heritage, money spent on evasion and obstruction of justice, laundering and covertly hiding Proof of a suspicious death. Life in jail was the suggested punishment. Without the chance for parole, the prosecution started with a number of pictures, as well as snippets from previously unpublished videos that feature Mike Wolfe negotiating dubious agreements at places not formally captured by the program. One of these depicted Mike giving money to a Syrian man in a Detroit garage in return for a tiny box that contains unconfirmed Roman. The prosecutor explained that these coins weren't as an antique collector but as a business model based on unlawful activity, disguising themselves through television. The blow to Mike's defense was severe. Originated from Frank Fritz's evidence, his longtime co-host of several seasons. After the show ended, Frank consented to testify, and his remarks effectively hushed the. He stated in the courtroom, "We used to guarantee we would only gather what was permitted, but as time went on, Mike transformed into. He was fixated on items that no one else had." Adding, "In order to maintain the show, we had to delve further, both physically and metaphorically." Frank remembered a 2021 occurrence in which they acquired a. Mike later wrote a wartime journal in Arkansas. Took it, and nobody was aware of its whereabouts. Frank, however, saw a copy of that weeks later. Fascinating diary, which is sold on the illicit market for 15 times the first amount value. The defense failed to provide a clear refutation of the tangible evidence. Rather than concentrating on portraying Mike as a guy confined to a system that he was unable to control, asserting that every transaction was carried out by the logistics group and that Mike loved antiques and wasn't a. Mike Wolfe, the mastermind, said nothing for much the whole trial. His eyes were gloomy, emotionless on the trial's 31st day. When asked whether he would like to talk to the Mike, the jury looked straight at them and stated, "I never thought of myself as a. I just wanted to speak for what, criminal. Rejected by others, if that makes me guilty. I agree." That startling assertion was cited in news stories that split popular opinion between adoration and condemnation. On the day of sentence, the magistrate spent a little more than 4 minutes reading the judgment in light of the amount of evidence, the degree of structure and the ensuing repercussions, particularly the keeping relics hidden from the court's ruling on international cultural theft. Mike Wolfe was given a life sentence without parole and ended all ownership rights associated with the ancient archaeology course and trademark. An old man broke down in the gallery, weeping. He had been a devoted follower of the display for 10 years on fan pages all. He had commended Mike on social media, but now that awe was either diminishing or transitioning to a state of commemoration. But the more significant concern was whether Mike was who was the genius behind it all, then. When the empire fell, and following the shocks 3 days following Mike Wolfe's officially condemned History Channel declared that American pickers and deleted all relevant material from its streaming service. The once quietly a very popular YouTube channel removed outdated videos from the website for ancient archaeology become meaningless interface with a single line of text. Momentarily suspended a name that was formerly connected to the culture of American television disappeared, thus swiftly that it nearly seemed as though had not been. Both displays were sealed by the FBI. Places in Tennessee and Iowa that Mike has designated places of worship for those enthusiastic about the Beyond North's hidden warehouse. Nashville was once an artifact. The collection center was moved to the Bureau of Heritage Management. During a month-long inventory, several things with unclearly falsified documentation, provenance, and worse, some have verified be religious relics from wartime areas such as Syria, Iraq, and there was a marble sculpture of Yemen among them, thought to be the property of an Ottoman king. 2003 saw the theft of a tomb. The market for antique auctions, temporarily halted. Significant businesses like Saab and Christie's released remarks examining any transaction that has an indirect connection to Mike Wolfe. Made a number of significant transactions worth hundreds of thousands of dollars were cancelled. Private collectors started worrying that the things they had bought Mike may be apprehended at any moment. Public sentiment began to split. Loyalists, supporters thought Mike had been transformed into a scapegoat for an established structure, working in the background of the art trade, as well as politics. On websites such as Reddit, Public, and X, discussions examined discrepancies in the research indicating that Mike may having unintentionally discovered information nobody wanted, disclosed a detail that keeps igniting. The list of 17 was a topic of popular controversy. Records discovered in Mike's storage facility. In addition to the coded transactions, marks from artifacts on the final page has a scribbled notation Q7R3 in it. Confusion theorists and VTI analysts hurried to decrypt it since some thought it was an acronym denoting a secret company engaged in luxury trafficking in artifacts that may be connected to a widely accepted hypothesis about religious authorities. Vatican, allegedly called the Vatican A, never received official recognition as an entity, despite the lack of concrete proof. This code's existence changed the plot into something even more unclear, going beyond a single man and a single television display. Another document made public by the Mike was on the forensic investigation team. Wolfe's private journal, which contains comments such as the scene in episode 312 where the ancient truck is. The leopard skin may be sliced or tracked. One page of the collection holder included one scribbled phrase that they'll never comprehend. Not every aspect of the past ought to be brought to light. This sheet was folded firmly, and sandwiched between irrelevant documents as though unknowingly, Mike had desired it to be discovered at Taro's federal jail, where Mike is incarcerated. All media access has been refused by officials. An unnamed former colleague disclosed that he ate by himself without talking to anyone, traveled alone without making any specific arrangements, as though he had agreed to the sentence or anticipated it in a closed hearing in March 2025. According to an FBI official, those that were involved in the case were still being watched, suggesting that the inquiry was still in progress, and one of the unofficial people who were subpoenaed were the previous head of the History Program channel, who was in charge of examining the unidentified cut episodes. If specific footage was removed, altered or purposefully buried. 2. To comprehend how it all came to this manner in which you must start at the beginning. Prior to the cameras rolling. Prior to the return of the $1 Million brand. To the location where Mike Wolfe first began. The tragedy's perpetrator was born in 1964. Into poverty in Joliet, Illinois. Working-class household headed by a single parent. Mother and 2 siblings, who managed to survive. Unused goods from. From an early age, Mike was a neighbor. Fascinated by items that others have thrown away. His pals were collecting baseballs. Young Mike searched the schoolyard for cards. Mounds of rubbish for old bikes and broken radios. His favorite phrase is, anything with gears. When he was younger, if people think. Although it is worthless. Maintaining. When American Pickers First. Mike's debut appearance on the History Channel was 40s, yet his eyes glowed when he still noticed an old license plate. The show became a success despite being infantile. Alongside Frank Fritz, Mike, his partner, traversed the United States for thousands of kilometers, revitalizing abandoned barns and garages. To uncover historical riches, he was adored for his expertise as well as, additionally, for his regard for vendors and his sincere enthusiasm for each and every item, but maybe that enthusiasm also. Yet another individual that collaborated with Mike in the. According to early years, he didn't merely gather items, but also gathered authority over recollections as the program evolved into more well-known, the demand to uphold. As viewing increased, every item had to surpass the previous one, and to accomplish that, Mike started looking for areas where nobody was permitted to enter: the black evidence lockers, marketplace vendors from regions affected by conflict. Nobody is certain of the precise time the line was crossed, but it became evident that he was no longer merely looking for something nobody. He was pursuing things that other people wanted. People might have been scared to stay in. In Mike's thoughts, he was doing well by saving fragments of the past from being forgotten, yet the law is ineffective in individual values. Mike Wolfe is currently the prisoner number 42,799. D54, the designation that formerly stood for the legacy of Americans, has been eradicated from all public forums, but inside the. It's still unclear if Mike Wolfe was a man who took use of the past for financial gain, or the last individual with the courage to save it. Despite the repercussions, Mike Wolfe used to be a traveler throughout America to gather recollections for a national television star, and eventually a convicted felon was given a life sentence in. The story serves as a reminder about incarceration. That occasionally the distinction between passion and misbehavior is less widespread than we believe. And the truth, know of how profound buried, will eventually return to the illumination. What do you think of Mike's sentence? Wolfe, is he a